an Eisner-winning writer. He's written for books such as Sheriff of Babylon, Mr. Miracle, Human Target, Vision, Gotham City, Year One. But this is a Batman podcast, so of course we got to talk about his Batman run. No, it's not Tom Taylor. It's Tom King. Tom, welcome to the Batman Book Club.
What a pleasure to be here. But before I start, let me just compliment you and thank you for doing this and for getting people out there reading comics and reading Batman comics, which are the best comics. So yes. You're doing God's and nerd God's work. And it is greatly appreciated by us comic book creators. Thank you.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for the content. You coming on to the Batman title actually got me into reading some other books that I probably wouldn't have otherwise visited. So some of the other works, like you did with Mr. Miracle and Vision, and I wholeheartedly loved Vision. Not saying I didn't like Mr. Miracle, it was just Vision just kind of, I think, knocked me on my ass a little bit. I just like, wow, this was great. So, and then of course, Strange Adventures. I zero knowledge of Adam Strange. I had zero and went into that book, and and I've come out like knowing just a little bit more now. So you two are doing the Lord's and the nerds work. So thank you.
I appreciate I have had a bizarre career where I've written I think I've written more Batman than anyone alive. It's like me and Chuck Dixon are going one-on-one, but I'm still going. But I'm more known for these like little projects than I am for all the copious amounts of Batman that I've written.
All these volumes of Batman. Well, before we get into the meat and potatoes, though, since this is your first time on the show, I have to ask you, what is your favorite Batman story?
Oh, you're gonna be so disappointed.
No wrong answer.
No, there is a wrong answer, and I'm gonna say it because it's like saying what's your favorite cheese you want in a burger. It's like American. Okay, great. What's this more? Yes, no, I'm a Frank Miller guy. I love Dark Knight Returns. I
was gonna guess as you were starting to set that up. I'm like, Dark Knight Returns. Is he leaning Dark Knight Returns?
That's it's the least obscure thing you can like as a Batman fan. I do like it more than Year One. I know there's lots of people who like Year One more. I think Dark Knight Returns is number one for me. And then after those two, I'd probably go to I love the Englehart Marshall famous detective runs. It has different names, but those 9 issues I think are just perfect Batman comics. And then I love the various Tim Sale Loeb properties, of course. And after that, there's a huge list. But and then the Killing Joke, Alan Moore. I know he's sort of he doesn't love that project. I personally think it's wonderful.
He's the only one who doesn't like it.
He's the only one who doesn't like I think it's brilliant. But I mean, if you say, wait, what you ask a guy in his 40s what his favorite comics are, and he names Alan Moore and Frank Miller as his favorites, it's just the most boring thing you can say. But it's still true for me.
Yeah, great. Did you dive into Dark Knight Returns as it was coming out? Did you get to experience it at that time?
I'm a little young for that. Okay. I got it. My first Batman comics were Aparo Starlin, Jason Todd's death. Where Joker was an Iranian embassy official and the very bizarre comics. But those were the first Batman comics I bought off the shelf, which is just like, that's got to be like 89, 88, 89. So it's like it's like 2 or 3 years after I missed it. No, I read DKR in trade when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and then I had this tradition growing up. I had a bunk bed. I used to share room with my brother, but he moved to his own room. I had the leftover bunk bed, and I would sleep on the bottom bunk. But during Christmas break, I would go into the top bunk, and I would take my 2 favorite comics with me, which were Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil, both of which were by Frank Miller, but I was too dumb to realize it because his style is so different between those 2 books. Like, he's much more abstract. And I would reread those every single Christmas. It was like my tradition from the time I was 10 to the time I was 17. Just once a year, I would reread those books because I thought they were just the pinnacle of comics.
Wow, great. Man, so I
know Frank Miller. He's like a friend of mine. It's very bizarre.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, it's very.
How's that feel? Did you ever have to really hold back from just be like, okay, I can't like geek out. I got to play this cool with him, or did you just hit him right up of like, I have so many questions, or I love Dark Knight Returns?
No, I geeked out from moment one. I've known him for what, like 7 years now. So I think it took me probably 4 years where I could kind of not stop immediately geeking out.
Yeah.
And I still kind of geek out to Frank. I mean, that's the key to Frank in talking to him, because he can shut down pretty quickly because he's just had the same conversation so many times. Sure. But he's a deep nerd about comics. That's like where he loves. So if you start talking to him about Neil Adams or Gil Kane or stuff, then he starts perking up. So Frank doesn't want to talk about his own stuff. I finally realized that. So it's like there was just limited time to me saying like, I can't believe. Did you know Dark Knight Returns was on a 16-panel grid? He's like, yes, I fucking did it. I know. You're not. No, I was completely unaware. Little kid. Yeah, I was complete. But it's also bizarre because. Frank was 29 when DKR came out, like he was about to turn 30. That's why he did it, because he wanted a Batman that was older than him. So he projected Batman forward because he always thought of Batman as 30. So Frank, even though he's like to me a god of my childhood, he's not that much older than me. He was just so young when he hit his stride. So he's only in his 60s. I mean, he's still I think got years to go.
When it came out, when he said that about a Batman older than him. That's actually stuck in my mind as well. And I thought about that as far as like the live action Batman. And I am 36, and I think Robert Pattinson is like 6 months older than me. And so I'm like, I think this is the last time that a Batman is going to be older than me. Everything after this is going to change. So whenever the next Batman comes along, it's like he's going to be younger than me. This is how Frank Miller felt. So thank you, Frank Miller.
I think of Batman in his late 30s, like 38, 39. That's kind of how I have Batman in my head. To have gone through so many Robins, and for Dick to have been 10 and now to be 21, that's how I kind of think of him as being. But of course, as you get older, you make Batman older. But now I can't lie to myself. Batman is definitely younger than I am.
He's younger. All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about can you believe it? Like, that is some of your Batman.
Yes, and for people who don't know, it goes black after the wedding. That's what it is. I think the design people were upset with the wedding decision.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, some people have wondered that too, and I think I saw you comment to somebody when these deluxe editions had come out of the first 3 are white, the last 3 are black. Any idea why the change up, or was that what was relayed to you of like the wedding because it was it was a dark period, so that's just how they justified it? These are nerd questions, of course. Most people are like, who cares? But
no, it's a question that occurs to me. Also, the first 2 volumes are glossy paper, then it switches to paper. Paper. That's a technical term in comics. Yes. Yeah, paper. Common people know what I'm talking about. Glossy paper versus paper. They understand. No, I have no idea. I just get them in the mail. They don't consult me on those. No one's ever offered me an explanation. Whenever I talk to the trade people, there's like 30 of them who do it, and they always blame it on the other guy. Sure. So yeah, I have no idea if that was a design thing. There was some thinking. I did hear this now that you mention it. That the trades for Rebirth did not sell as well as the trades for New 52 at the time. And DiDio, who was obviously the head of DC Comics for a long time, felt that one theory he had of why that wasn't selling was because the trade dress was all white. They had gone with an all white trade dress. And he said the white doesn't appeal to consumers. So I think at some point that became a don't do all white trade dresses anymore. Because if you look at the Rebirth, all the first trade dresses for the first 3 volumes of everything are all white. And then I think they got away from that. So I do think it was actually DiDio had some, I don't know if a marketing guy told him that or it was his own gut instinct, but he decided that white doesn't sell to comic book consumers. So we're going with
well, for 6 books total, at least they did it at an even number of 3 and 3 instead of like 5 and 1 or something, so it'll at least it hasn't bothered me. Actually, what bothered me more was in getting these of there wasn't a definitive answer that, oh yeah, we're going to make sure that we get all of Tom King's run and released in deluxe edition. So I got the first, in which is actually funny from my personal Twitter account. I think I tag you when I get a hold of one, and then it is like a crowning achievement for Tom King to claim you a nerd. on Twitter. It's like a badge of honor. But
I mean it in the nicest way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But it was like, okay, when are we going to get another one? Are we going to get a next one? And it really felt like this last volume 6 took a while. And I know they first released like City of Bane, I think in was it in multiple trades, and then I collecting the
multiple
whole thing
trades,
in a
and
trade.
it got a whole trade, and then it got it got 2 hardcovers, and then a big single trade. And
okay,
yeah, it was
and
very.
I was nervous.
The City of Bane release was very bizarre how they did it, and then I was nervous too that final volume wouldn't come out. And I think it was actual demand on Twitter. I don't know if they just forgot or like, oh yeah, we have to do that, and then they did it. Yeah, but
maybe they listened to me.
It could have been your actual tweets. I have survived by Twitter pressures. A bunch of people take Twitter. Like my Omega Men series got canceled, and then Twitter responded, and Jim Lee was literally renewed it based on Twitter responses. So thank you people who said that, because I love that volume. I love having the full collection of it.
Yeah. It would have really made me sad to have, because I just couldn't do it. I mean, they already split the colors enough to then go of like 5 hardcovers and then a trade of City of Bane or something. I'm like, oh no, I need this hardcover. No. I need this hardcover. Come on. And then it finally got announced, and I got it right away. And yeah, it's lovely. And also I'm hardcover over soft, also paper over glossy. So
you're paper over glossy. I like paper on trades.
Yeah,
I think that looks nice because the coloring looks a little nicer. But on oversized hardcovers, I like glossy.
You do? Okay.
I distinguish somehow between the two, because when I came back into comics in the early aughts, I was collecting almost all oversized hardcovers because Marvel was doing these oversized hardcover collections of Ultimate X-Men, and Image started doing Invincible, and that's where I was like, I love them. They're big and glossy, and I do wish they would do them in glossy paper. That'd be my only complaint for the oversized. On the trades. Okay. I mean, it all has to do with, in the last 5 or 10 years, paper stock has gone up so much that they're trying to save money. It all has to do with economy.
It's all money. It's always down to money. Right.
The answer to all your questions is money.
Everything down to money. I have a ton of questions for you here.
I'm here. I'm ready.
Not about money, though. Not about money at all.
Sweet.
Basically, I mean, just mostly about, the Batman run of all the backstory with that. I guess, we can start at the very beginning of how did you get involved? Because anybody, I think for the popularity of that New 52 Batman run with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, anybody who's going to follow that, at least from a fan's perspective, it seemed like that was a massive hit run. Anybody to follow those steps has to be a little intimidating. So how did you get involved in taking on the Rebirth Batman?
I'm still intimidated by it. I still think in my head of Scott being the definitive Batman writer. And I say that as a very competitive, ambitious human being who will fight anyone for any page. But like when people come up to me and they bring, like Bat stuff, like here's my Bat statue, here's my book of Batman. They're like, I always say like, no, don't you mean that for Scott? He's the Batman guy. Like, bring me the Mr. Miracle toy. I was like, no, Tom, you wrote Batman for 5 years of your life. You're still writing him. Yeah. You sold, we sold a ton of comics. But it started a lot of luck, a lot of being in the right place at the right time. I had written, most people who come on Batman sort of traditionally, or if you want to sort of get in line, you write one of the family titles, and I'd written Grayson, a family title, with Tim Seeley. And as New 52 started, I'm going to get some of these details wrong, but this is sort of my memory of it. I had done well on Grayson, and Vision had become a bigger hit. Vision was like my big breakthrough comic. And so they're like, Tom, you can come on Detective with New 52, which was quite a promotion. I was like, oh my God, I'd only been comics for a year and a half by then, to then be writing Detective Comics was crazy, right? Yeah. And so I was super excited about that. And because James was also in the mix still back then. And then Scott decided, because Scott was supposed to do Batman, he decided, Capullo jumped off to do the Image book with Mark Miller. And Scott said, I don't want to do a double ship book, because he'd always been with Capullo, without Capullo. He's like, I'll do a single ship book. And Dan's like, we have to double ship Batman. That's like one of the things we have to do. And so Scott said, he said, no, I'm going to do a single. And he grabbed JRJR, who's obviously huge. and they're going to do so at that point, Dan said, that can't be Batman. That has to be something else. We don't have a Batman writer. It was right about to go in. Who do we have? And so I was on detective. And so they shifted me over to Batman. And suddenly, instead of being a year and a half till I got detective, it was a year and a half till I got DC's biggest book. Yeah. And
wow.
Yeah, I remember when they announced it, I looked at my, at the time I had, whatever, I specifically remember I had 6,000 Twitter followers. And, by the end of Batman, I had 150,000. So, like, it's like, wow. I mean, it's a whole different level of everything when you're on Batman. And also we were doing a Batman #1, which is only the third time Batman #1's ever been done. But at that, may this happen to you in your life, because it was joyous. Marvel was also coming after me because of Vision. Everything's because of Vision. Vision became and so they had offered me a big contract and a bunch of big books, and I had to decide if I was going to do Batman or Marvel. I couldn't do both. It had to be exclusive contract.
Was it just Marvel in general, or was there a specific direction?
They offered,
just curious.
No, it's a good question. I mean, this is 2016, so we're quite a ways back.
Only 7 years.
I know, but it just gets longer. It just gets farther back every year. They had offered me, this is Axel Alonso, some Star Wars book, and Walter and I, who'd done Vision, we were going to do a series of 12-issue specials. We're going to do I've said this other way, but a Fantastic Four and then a Power Pack, like a trilogy of family was going to be called. Nice. And then just on one day in this very office I'm sitting in, I decided to write Batman #1 on spec to see if I could. And I turned it into the editor, Mark Doyle, a brilliant editor who's now at IDW. And he loved it. And I was like, well, I literally was like, well, I just want to see this issue just because I like this issue, the issue where he's flying on the plane. And that's when I said yes. And then Scott and I ended up doing the Rebirth special together. And then I was on Batman 1, and it was double shift, me and David Finch, off to the races.
Oof.
and let me just say, and I slipped on a banana on my first try. The first arc is my least favorite arc of the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Because as connective tissue almost throughout your entire run too with Claire Clover.
Yes, Claire Clover, named after my daughter Claire. Nice. And I have in her office, I have a David Finch splash with Gotham Girl on it, and I have a Clayman splash with Gotham Girl on it.
That's cool.
Up at her office, her bedroom, just
in her office.
In her office. She's now 12. She was just a little thing back then.
So with taking on something like that, is it discussed early on? And I know nothing. It just kind of feels like nothing is definitive these days. But was it seen as, Tom, you're in this for the long haul? Hey, we're gonna commit to 6 months, a year. What's the proposal to you when you sign on to Batman?
It was it's no different than today. It's like, if as long as it sells, you can be on it, was sort of the deal. That didn't turn out to be the deal in the end, but and I was like, I want to do 100 issues. I wanted to, from the very beginning, I was like, I'm going to do 100 issues. And it seemed possible because it was double shift. So 100 issues was only 5 years instead of 10 years. And Scott had done 51 because he didn't do the last one. James did the last one. So it was big in scope from the beginning. And I had a general vision of what it would be, and it sort of got closer and closer. Once I knew it would be about Batman Catwoman, I didn't realize how much it would be about Batman Catwoman as soon as I saw their sort of chemistry, and that became sort of the defining center of the series.
And so that's perfect. As I was going to say, as long as it sells, you can stay on Batman. So you had a general idea of what you want to do over the whole series. When does that vision fully come into play? As far as, at the front, I think I said this 2 episodes ago with our mutual friend Mike Cronenberg.
I love Mike Cronenberg. Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's a genius when it comes to comic book knowledge, nerd knowledge. But Batcat, that of course feels like the instantly recognizable thing for Tom King's Batman run is Batcat. But there, you can almost say in the shadows, is Bane kind of also haunts that whole run too, I think. And I just did a rerun of all of these issues, probably November and December. And I mean, it really does read through really, really well, in
Awesome.
which mission accomplished, from my perspective of, it seems like this was the plan all along. Like from issue 1, this is what Tom King was planning on. And then when you break it down, it kind of seems like, oh, wow, did you really have that vision for it to be like this? Or were you kind of figuring it out, connecting as you were going along?
I had a general plan, which was, I always wanted Bane to be the big bad. I wanted there to be one bad that got over everything. And Scott had done so much Joker, and definitive, wonderful Joker. Scott and Greg had just really, that's where the heart of their series was this Joker Batman relationship. And it even ended with the two of them sitting on a bench and sort of discussing everything. And so I didn't want it to be Joker, who's the obvious villain. And talking to Andy Corey, an editor at DC Comics at the time, and we were talking about possible villains, and he's the one who proposed Bane to me. And I was like, Bane, oh man, he's, I was thinking of the movie. And even though I had grown up on those comics, like the Bane Breaks Batman was like, I remember when I read that, I was at a McDonald's by myself outside my comic book shop, eating a Big Mac. I was like, oh my God. But he's like, he gave me Bane's origin story, which I had sort of forgotten out of my mind. I was like, oh yeah, grew up in a prison. He's like, no, he lived in a prison by himself for 17 years. And every night the prison cell flooded. And I got this vision of this kid stuck in this cell for 17 years, just the willpower to survive. And I was like, that's my guy. Because Joker can match Batman on crazy. Riddler can match Batman on intelligence. Penguin can match Batman on sort of planning. But Bane matches Batman on willpower. And I thought that's what Batman's real power is his willpower, is never to give up. And that's what they, that's when you have the rock, the immovable object and the thing that has to move it. My wife's here saying hi. And so that became, Bane became the bad guy. I knew that would be the big bad from the beginning. And also trying to, again, differentiate myself from Scott. Scott had done so many great things. But he'd gone sort of more of a science fiction Batman. If people remember, by the end of Scott's run, Batman was downloading his body into different things, and there were big mecha battles and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, my Batman's going to have, we're going to not a lot of tech. After the first arc, he only uses a batarang, and a rope gun, basically, for the rest of the match. He doesn't use, he's never a robot, he's never Iron Man, he's always Batman. That was a big thing. And the other thing, Scott had done a little bit of romance, but not a lot. He sort of introduced a little romance character, but he hadn't sort of emphasized that part. He'd done horror, he'd done this, and I was like, I'm going to do romance. That's the stuff that's missing. Because I watched some old Batman 66 episodes, and boy, my God. The chemistry between Catwoman and Batman and those old things. I mean, it's goofy and silly, but it's also sexy as hell. So I was like, I'm going to lean into that. So those are sort of my three things, like a simplified Batman, a back to basics Batman, with Bane as the big villain, and a romance between him and Catwoman. And I carried that whole thing. And then the plan was, and always was this W shape where you sort of, I establish who Batman is. I sort of get him to a place for the first 25 issues. This is what you're looking at. Here's the Bane, here's all the characters, put all the characters on the board. And then for the next, and that was at issue 24, which is the engagement. And for the next 25 issues, I raise him up. I raise him up to the highest point he's ever been in terms of happiness, in terms of how much he likes being his life. And that's to 50, where the wedding was. Wedding goes badly. Then he crashes down for 25 issues. That's when Bane's plan kicks in, and Bane's kicking his ass, and he's getting hit and hit and hit until he's like completely shattered. And that's where 75 was. And then 75 to 100 was going to be the climb back up to happiness, ending at 100 in the wedding. So that was always the plan, sort of the zigzag.
Wow. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before. Instead, it's almost like characterized a little bit of there's pre-wedding, wedding, post-wedding to me. But I think, when I reread this time, it's the focus on the Bat-Cat relationship came in earlier than I remembered it. So it totally makes sense of how what you just said of like the establishment and like the W. I had a friend who kind of questioned me, who's a big Bane fan, because I said is your last issue or episode or the one before it, where I said that I feel like Nightfall was Bane's massive introduction. but then I think I worded it, and I never know if I articulated something well or not. Probably not. But like almost as if didn't know what to do with Bane. And maybe that's just because, you know, he steps up to the plate and hits a grand slam to win the World Series. Anything after that is not as good, you know? So that's his intro. And then I just don't feel like there's been many definitive Bane stories, like big Bane stories, which I know right now the One Bad Day initiative kind of is to try and do that for villains.
Yeah.
And I said, now like your run, I think it provides some of those big Bane stories with, I mean, I Am Suicide. I feel like you can't get I Am Bane without I Am Suicide. You can't get City of Bane without I Am Bane and I Am Suicide. But I mean, they are arcs that I think there's stories for Bane that I think there's more than just Nightfall with Bane.
Yeah, I mean, Bane had gotten caught up in a lot of different things. Number one, he was a creature of the 90s. So by the time I started on comics, people were rejecting all sort of the 90s tropes, the sort of Rob Liefeld of it all. Too many patches, too big muscles, you know. And another thing is people had sort of told the two great Bane stories. The one, Bane beats Batman, and the other is like the story of Venom, like that O'Neill story where Batman takes Venom and gets drugs, and like those are the two perfect Bane stories that already been told. So people didn't sort of know how to tell new stories once the kind of ideals have been met. Sort of like I didn't know how to tell Joker stories after Scott had told brilliant Joker stories.
I noticed that as well. It makes sense too how you said, with as much as New 52, Batman used Joker very effectively, because I think Death of the Family is one of my favorite Joker stories.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think Endgame is a great sequel to that story. I noticed that in the villains that you do touch in your run, there isn't much Joker. Of course, he's used at times, but I don't think you didn't make it, it's Batman and then it's Joker and then Catwoman for your run. I mean, Joker is a very, in movie credits, he'd be and the Joker, like the last the last actor named in that, but he's used effectively, I think. So I mean, I guess I appreciate, as much as Joker's my favorite Batman villain, I appreciate his absence in these 85 issues.
I love Joker, and he's probably, you know, maybe the second most popular character in DC Comics after Batman. I mean, if you had to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, unlike a lot of DC Comics characters, he has $1 billion movie, you know, like that is something that happened. But I mean, I did use him a lot. I did a whole arc called The War of Jokes and Riddles. He was the catalyst to the wedding going off, and he's the star of the sort of Batcat series, which is to me the sort of end of the whole thing. So I'm not going to say I used him sparingly, because he was in there, but yeah, it did seem like he needed to be rethought. Like I feel like if you use a character too much, he gets to be boring, he gets to be dull. And also my conception of the Joker is sort of an agent of utter chaos, someone who could press a button blowing up the world, or press a button that makes him fart and doesn't care which one he presses that day.
Yeah.
Like that's not he's not the big planner. He's not like, I have a great scheme. I was thinking of him as sort of just like dropping a nuclear bomb in the middle of your story. I mean, it's pure evil. Just as Batman is pure organization, he's pure chaos.
The DC Nation short story with him, where he showed up
at my favorites. Yeah,
is his name? Is it Mark?
Joe or Mark Martell, something like Martello,
something like that. That poor guy, and he's just like, well, why would you think the invitation would get sent here? It's like, well, it needs to show up somewhere at some time or someplace. So this is someplace and this is sometime, and it's so weird because it's like evil, but that's like a perfect voice for Joker, because it's like, I mean, that makes sense, but it's absurd. And then it just brings him complete joy, in the sense of like right at the very end and pop him off. I just think like, oh man, I love that little short, expertly illustrated by Clayman.
Clayman draws my favorite Joker. My apologies to all the incredible Joker artists ever, but just something he does with the eyes, it really honestly scares me. He just showed me a Joker image this morning. These little pupils that he puts in there that just like see into your soul. He draws my favorite Joker, Clay.
Okay, I'm going to turn to it. I know this because I seriously I thought of that as I was looking at over in his Roger. I apologize. I don't know where Mark came from. Got Mark Waid on the brain, maybe.
It's all right.
Hey, Roger, did you hear the one about the letter that didn't have a stamp? And Roger says no, and he goes, you wouldn't get it. And then the next panel is that turn with those pupils, and it's like that's freaking horrifying. That's like horrifying. That's in a horror movie right there of like just that quick, like kind of like
Yeah, that was tough when I was explaining it to the editors. I was like, so he's just in this random guy's house and he's torturing him. He's like, why is he torturing him? I was like, oh no, Joker doesn't need a why. He doesn't need a reason. He doesn't want money.
It's
he doesn't
Joker.
Yeah, he doesn't want to prove a point. He's when you're a writer, what you do, like almost like the definition of your profession is you balance people's motivation against other people's motivation. Why is this guy in this room at this time? Why is he walking to the door? Why is he throwing this? Why is he on the ground? Like, what in his brain made him want to be in this situation? And that's true. Why is Batman Batman? Because his parents died. Why is Superman Superman? Because his planet grew up. But then you say, why is Joker do? He's unlike any other character because there is no answer. Why does Joker go to this random guy's house and kill him? For no reason at all. No, he doesn't do it for a reason. It's not because he was sad about this guy or hated this guy or anything. He's just like, meh, this idea popped in my head, and so I'm going to kill him. And that's horribly frightening. That makes him that makes him Joker and unique and terrible in my mind.
In the Best Man two-parter where he's talking to Selina as they're both laying there, and he mentions about how he likes Harvey. I think so what you just said is the reason I just thought of that part, because I think Joker loves, as was I think demonstrated perfectly in The Dark Knight, loves that idea that somebody's just like, I'll just leave the decision up to the flip of a coin.
Yeah.
So the Joker being a little fascinated with a character like that makes total sense. And how, like, I don't know, like as close as Joker could have an ally, like Two-Face would be his ally just because he's like, I love your absurd existence is based on the flip of a coin.
Yes.
So
that's what Joker loves about Two-Face is that he flips a coin, and what he loves about Riddler is that he always gets caught. He doesn't love people for the reasons we love them. He loves them for the absurdity and for the joke of the whole thing. He loves Penguin because he has a long nose and it looks funny when he gets punched.
It's like deal with umbrellas.
What's the deal with the umbrella? Penguins don't have umbrellas. It makes no sense.
Yeah. So let's say you touched on as a writer, and how much of I mean, this isn't like throwing anybody under the bus, but you have somebody to answer to with ideas where you want stories to go and such like that. What's that whole process like? Because I always get really interested, and some people like to keep the mystery there, and I totally understand that. I'm interested in knowing, like, well, no, there's a long journey before we get that issue in our hands and we're reading it. So as far as you coming up with the ideas and writing the scripts, like, who do you have to answer to almost, in a sense, whether it is get approval or just have somebody check the right box to continue the process? What's that like?
I mean, it's a stupid answer that you're not going to like, but it depends.
Well, it answered my question, so there we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely situational. It's where you are, it's what you're working on, it's who your editor is. It's who you are as a creator. It's your track record, whether they trust you, whether they don't trust you. I mean, I can speak for me personally, or me in certain situations of my career. But right now I have very free reign. I mean, typically for after I wrote Batman 85 up to, I don't know, this summer, I haven't worked on anything that's sort of in continuity ongoing. I do in continuity things, but they're kind of side stories. They're like The Killing Joke. And so I've been doing that for like 3 or 4 years, and I get, I pitch them. We talk about them with I have fantastic editors I work with, Ben Abernathy, Brittany Holzer. We talk about them, but basically I have free reign to go where I want to go with the stories, which is wonderful. But I mean, the reason is because I've been in this industry for 10 years, and I've sold comics have sold 500,000. I've won awards. I'm very good with my deadlines. they know I'm not going to do something that's horribly offensive. You know, I have a
Mm-hmm.
track record to sort of to get it done. You know, you have to sort of earn that. But also, it's also hard because in the beginning of your career, when you haven't earned it, there's times you need to learn to when to push back and when not to push back, so you can have your own voice but not go crazy.
Did you ever have to? Is there anything of note that you really had to push to fight uh, for the Batman run?
I mean, it's a whole saga of why it ends at 85 and why and how the wedding goes and all that stuff, and why the wedding is not in the comic like it was supposed to be. So, I mean, that was a whole push. Were there things that I had to push for that are actually in the run? I mean, I mean, there's stuff like Clay Mann. I mean, who I think is one of the great artists. He was not established when he first came on Batman. I had to fight to get him on. I thought he could do an amazing job, and he did. You know, he came out with Batman 24 for the Engagement issue and nailed it right out of the park. And then, you know, did these, you know, Kite Man issues, and then did everyone's favorite, the Double Date issue, which is everyone's favorite maybe my favorite comic I've ever written. It's the one I signed the most, which is crazy because I've written a Batman #1. They bring me Batman 37 instead. DC hated that. That was they did not want to do it when I proposed it. After I wrote it, I got a nasty gram from being like, never do this again. This is not who we did. You know, they were like, my most successful issue was despised, and I had to fight very hard to get that one little Double Date issue. Because there's violence in it, there's robbery and stuff, but they're like, this is not Batman. This is just
sure.
So there was that sort of thing. And there were battles I lost that you can see in the issue. In the beginning, the Batman's father, you know, this sort of the dark Batman, he was not supposed to be as big a character as he became towards the end. He was more supposed to be the Darth Vader to Bane's Emperor, if you will, like his best bodyguard. And towards the very end, the powers that be DC said, no, we want Bane to, you know, go down a little more and bring Batman's father more into the forefront. And that I tried to fight that, and I lost because I wanted to be more Bane Batman to the end. So that was a fight I lost. But I still, you know, tried to write it as best I could. I mean, you can't
say, are you satisfied with how that came out?
Yes, I am. I love the end. I love the last issue.
Yeah.
I love what he says to his father, you know, like, I've been a child, and now, I mean, my whole point of the thing was, in looking at Batman, because I started off Batman when I first started. My mother had just died, and I was raised by my mother and my grandmother. My dad left when I was very young, and then my grandmother died right before the first issue came out. And so I kind of started in a place of mourning, and I always felt like Bruce's motivation, which we've gone back to 1,000 times. My parents died. I'm sad about it. I'm going to fight crime. Is awesome. It's the most perfect origin story that's ever been created in the history of literature. But it's also just a little bit childish. Like, a lot of us have had parents die. A lot of us have gone through grief. A lot of us have had bad things happen, and we don't put on dark suits and grieve about it for the rest of our lives. And, you know, just a part of life is losing your parents, and part of life is finding a way to deal with that grief. And I wanted to give that journey to Bruce. So I was very happy at the end that's where sort of he ended his journey. So I was very content with that. I was not content. They were very much supposed to get married, and that was yanked away from me at the last second. I was obviously very mad, and I'm still mad to this day at how Batman 50 was marketed. They were never going to get married in Batman 50, and the DC marketed as they were going to get married. And I didn't object to that because I was, again, 2 years into comics and realized you could object to marketing. And that broke a lot of people's hearts. And I'm still to this day, I saw someone, you know, Tom King fucked up the relationship. I was like, Batman and Catwoman weren't even together when I first came. They had not been together since the beginning of New 52 for like 2 pages. And before that, it had been like, you know, 20 years since they'd had a substantive relationship. I mean, they were together in the 3rd movie, but besides that, so I brought them together, and my plan was to have this complete, and it was ripped from me and ripped from the fans. And and I'm sad that happened.
At the time that came out, then was it kind of, because I remember actually, and I completely applaud, which I've been a fan of Seth Meyers on late night, but I totally applaud that he is a major face on TV that gives appreciation to comic book creatives. That
Absolutely.
he did invite one Sir Tom King onto Late Night with Seth Meyers,
It did.
Building up to that issue, the wedding issue, so to speak. But when you're on something like that, is it hard for you to talk about this knowing like this is not how I wanted this to go, but this is how it's going? In the sense of the image is that they are going to get married. That's what it's being marketed as. There is going to be a wedding, and I know that there wasn't going to be. Because you can't, I can understand if you can't say it, you can't say all that, but also like, I got to put on my best acting face. Or
I could be remembering this wrong, but I thought I went on Seth after the wedding went poorly, or that's in my head. I could be totally wrong about that. I went on Seth to promote Mr. Miracle and to start promoting.
Maybe I've got all that wrong.
Heroes in Crisis, but I could be wrong. My brain is soft. Too many years in Warzone.
Well, I remember definitely you being on the rep Mr. Miracle because of Seth definitely bringing up it's not Seth Meyers quote unquote image that Mitch Gerrits drew in that book.
All I remember is I was backstage. I took my wife, to try to impress her. And so we were backstage, and there were like movie stars backstage, and we were all being very cool. And Seth Meyers comes up to talk to me. He's like, "Oh my God, Seth Meyers talked to me. It was so cool." And he's like, "Tom, can I just tell you that this is my favorite comic? I love it. Miracle Man is the absolute best." And I was like, "Oh, do I correct Seth Meyers?" Yeah. I was like Miracle Man by Alan Moore, and
yeah.
I was like, and my wife is like laughing in the background. She's like, "Oh, you think you're big shit, but he doesn't even know the name of your comic book." So it was a classic build up teardown. No, what they should have done for Batman 50, it was always planned to be. They married 100, and she leaves him at the altar at 50. It was a typical soap opera. What they should have been is will they or won't they? It wasn't a very hard marketing decision. It should be will they get married or won't they get married? You've seen that in 1,000 different sitcoms. That's what it should have been. Yeah. And it was, and in all his credit, Scott called me and said, "Tom, they're marketing this wrong. You're going to get in a lot of trouble." And I remember, this is soap opera. People will be excited. Oh no, they didn't get me. I mean, I fucked it up. I did it. I should have known. But if you look back, you won't find any tweet where I'm like, they're going to get married. Yeah. A lot of people are like, "Oh, you made us buy a bunch of crossovers." I did not promote those crossovers. They were not my idea. They were made for a friend, Tim Seeley, who's a dear friend of mine. And there were just 4 of them, and they had very little to do with the wedding. So, I mean, my constant plan is there's going to be a wedding, and there was a wedding. There was just not a marriage. But yeah, I do. Lord knows if I could take it back and do it differently, I would 100%.
Since we were there with issue 50,
although I do like the issue. I like how it's written.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Applaud yourself. Sometimes it's okay to appreciate your own work.
I mean, we made that as big as we possibly could. I mean, we had Neil Adams art. We had Frank Miller returning to Batman for the first time.
That's what I was going to comment on. Was it your idea? Do you remember? I know I'm asking of things that were 4 or 5 years ago. Your idea for that to unfold the way that it was, in the sense of you had your main artist, but intercut with a variety of these all-stars doing maybe their iconic or favorite kind of Batcat panel, like full page.
Yes, I mean, it was always so. I had a big thing when I first came on Batman was to, and I don't know if I regret this or not, and it gets broken a bit in City of Bane, but I was only going to do arcs based on the artist. So no artist would do. We wouldn't have multiple art on one arc. Mm-hmm. So we had David Finch, and then Mikkel, and then Finch, and then Mitch, and then Mikkel again. So it was, so you didn't have like the same story with different artists on it, because it always bugged me as a kid. I hated reading comics where it's like,
same.
Infinity Gauntlet is the great example, right? Like even Ron Lim is fantastic, but when you get from that George Perez to Ron Lim, you're like, what happened? Why does Thanos look different all of a sudden?
Things happen. I totally understand that, but if you're asking me to just be fully honest, bugs the hell out of me with one story has a change up in art. Because it changes the aesthetic of things. So same. I know it can't be helped sometimes. I know, but as a fan, it's like, oh damn. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
And that's so hard to do with. So we were doing double ship Batman, which is tough because that means you're doing 24 issues a year. And it's Batman, so it has to be A-list artists. Most A-list artists can do between 6 and 8 issues a year. So, that's not hard math. That means you need 4 different artists working at the same time on different projects. So it was a lot of writing for a lot of different people. So when I was writing Batman, I'd write issue 17, then I'd write issue 23, then I'd write issue 6, and then I'd write issue 18, and then I'd write a special on the side. And it was all over the place.
It's like you're channeling your Dr. Manhattan.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's July 18th. It's April 3rd.
Yeah,
it's October 20th.
it was a running joke because you had to keep feeding these artists that I write about a comic book a week. So every Friday I would turn in a book, and my Batman editor, it was first Mark Doyle, then Jamie Rich, would be like, okay, next up is this, and they'd tell me the issue and the artist, and that's would be the next issue I'd write.
So for 50. Are you reaching out to each one of these artists? Okay, so you're talking with them, and so
for 51, do a huge celebration of what we had done because it was 50 issues so far, and it was a big issue. So we wanted to do all of the big artists we were. So I knew it was going to be a 50-page issue, I believe. No, or 38-page issue. God, how big is 50? I think it's 38 pages. So I knew Mikkel was going to do 22, and that would be the main story. We wanted Mikkel to do that because he had done the most issues with us so far. And so he should have the honor, but like we wanted to spotlight him because he was like our workhorse. Everything was because when you have artists like Finch and Clayman and Tony Daniel, like you also just need a workhorse artist, someone who can churn pages to make sure the rest of those guys can make their deadlines. And that's who Mikkel was. He was like, he pulled us through every deadline. He was the heart and soul of that book. So we knew Mikkel should draw the main story, and then we wanted to pay tribute to a bunch of past artists who had worked on it. So so we got Clay and Mitch and Dave and David, and then those basic people, and then that filled about half of it. And then I was like, okay, we'll just do splashes, and I was gonna do this letter thing, so I was like, I'll do letters over the splashes, and that way you don't have to say to give each one a different page's script. It would be hard to just do that. So I was like, just do a splash of whatever you think Batman is. And so then I was like, and then once we take care of the people who've contributed to our run, let's do an honor to the greats. Let's get Frank Miller, let's get Jim Lee, let's get Jose Garcia Lopez, let's get Lee Weeks. And so whatever it was, 20 artists got the assignment to just draw, Becky Cloonan, the best Batcat splash they could. And then they came in, and then I was the one who decided which order they would be in and which letter they would sort of match up with. And I remember I put my favorite one last, which is Lee Weeks, which is still awesome. Probably my favorite image for my entire run is that Lee Weeks splash from issue 50.
What's it like on your end as each one's coming in and you're getting to see that? Like,
oh my God. Jeez.
Yeah.
I just saw a dealer list Capullo's splash for $40,000. Wow. So if you want to buy it, it's out there.
Yeah.
If you
looking to spend some money.
Yeah. If you have a few cars you want to sell to get it.
I just opened the book and look at the one
that's my favorite image from my whole run. Yeah.
Can't even plan that.
That's a little bit of meta there, because if you ask him, none of the lines actually meet, because he knew the wedding wasn't going to come out. So it's like they're close, but they never actually.
Oh.
I tried to buy that for him. I put $7,000 of cash money, dollar bills on his table, and I said, "Can I have this splash?" And I had a stack, and he goes, "No." I was like, "Oh man, I was so close."
He's like, "Tom, somebody's offering me 40,000."
Yeah, that's
okay.
Right. Like he was smart. He can be more for it than that now. But back then, I was like, "Oh my God." Yeah, I tried to.
I remember my reaction for that one, and then getting to see that, because oh man, it's fuzzy, but I think I remember whoever got to read it early, I feel like somebody posted the spoiler before it came out.
So what happened was, it was so funny because it came out, I think it was like July 7th. It was like July 4th weekend, it was a 3-day weekend before then. And the reviews came out, and they were good reviews because the issue was good. Like the beforehand reviews from the people we sent it to. And then it must have been the slowest news day of all time. The New York Times decided to do an article, and I'd done an interview for it, and they decided to title their article "Catwoman Leaves Batman at the Altar" or something like that. And they did a push notification to their 10 million whatever phone subscribers. So it popped up as like that thing on your phone. Batman does, it's the most famous I've ever been. Batman leaves Catwoman, and that's when, because nobody had read the issue, they didn't know why she left. They didn't know.
There's no context.
Yeah, there's no context to it all. You're just not emotionally prepared for it. Like the whole thing is I mean, it's a very emotional issue. It makes me, her letters to him and his letters to her, and how much they love each other, and how they're just this far apart, and why she leaves. All that stuff is ripped away, and you're just getting, boom, a spoiler. And oh my God, yeah, people just went. I mean, that's when I got the death threats, and had to get the bodyguard and the whole thing. Geez. So it was a hell of a July 4th that week.
That's crazy over comics. I mean,
but there's no reason to complain. The issue sold tremendously.
Yeah,
and like I said, if I had to go back, I would market it differently, because it's not worth making people that upset. We're comics. We're not supposed to upset you. That's the whole point.
I feel like I know I avoided the spoiler. I didn't come across any of it. I might have seen you give a heads up on your Twitter or something. I don't remember the wordage or anything, but it wasn't finger point shit talk anybody either. It was just like something about spoilers out there or whatever, and I was able to avoid it. And so when I read it, and then seeing that last page, which when you get context of where the rest of the story is going, that last page is freaking like, man, that hit of like, oh shit, oh wait, what the hell, that's Flashpoint Batman. What the hell's going on here? So I mean, with context, the whole part of it, I don't know, like,
and it's also it's a to be continued. It's not like they'll never get married. I mean, this is comics. We live in the second act. And the plan was, because I was in the middle of a 100-issue story. I couldn't get him. There's nowhere to go after they get married. I would screw over the person next to me, but that part of it would have been difficult. So,
well, if it's any consolation, I didn't read that and then think at the end, "F you, Tom King, you just gave me the middle finger. How dare you?"
That's okay. I didn't feel that way. Lots of people did. That's okay. It's okay. I sympathize with them. I entirely do. And I should say, I wrote Batcat. I wrote A Wedding for Them. I really love it. It's drawn by Clay Mann. It's in Batcat 12. You can read what should have been Batcat 11. Or what should have been Batman 100. I did it. And Lord, look, nobody, as much as you fans were pushing for Batman and Catwoman to get married, I was pushing 3 times as hard against. I very much wanted it to happen. And at one point, when we got to issue 50, I did not have a yes yet. I thought I could eventually get it, but at 50, it was still a no. And at about issue 80, it was a yes. And so at one point we had a yes, and I thought it was going to happen, and then it dissipated.
Ugh. Well, everything.
It's hard to get a corporation to make. It's hard to move a corporation. It's very hard.
I can imagine so. I have not been in that situation. So, you touched upon something to deviate a little bit away from the wedding, but as far as you were touching on artists in this run, so I'm not going to be able to remember every single artist that was included in your run, but I mean, you've already mentioned David Finch. You've I asked and I already forgot beforehand. Mikkel. Okay, Jay. I just don't want to offend somebody. Mikkel J.
Mikkel is very low stress about this. You can call him Janin if you want. He doesn't.
Okay,
but my understanding is it's Kanin. He's a like many of the brilliant artists I work with. He's a Spaniard. There's a lot of Spanish artists.
Sure. Okay, got it. Tony Daniel, Jorge Fornes.
Oh my God, so good.
Mitch Gerrits, Joel Jones. I know I'm missing, even in City of Bane, you got legendary JR, John Romita Jr.
Joel Jones doing the first arc. Becky Cloonan had done one Batman issue, but Joel Jones was the first female artist to do an arc of Batman.
Excellent. Awesome. We're gonna touch on that too. Make sure if we wrap up and I haven't talked about Joel Jones, bring her back up, please. Clayman,
so brilliant. She knows I'd work with her a drop of a hat. Unfortunately, Joelle Jones discovered that she can also write, which is the worst thing any artist can discover.
Yeah. I wanted, we'll come back to her, I promise. A whole list of all these great artists. How does that go about for you? So, I mean, I guess you already kind of touched upon it of, you, as I said, playing your Dr. Manhattan of writing all over the place. To bring in artists, I guess the reality of the situation that you already touched upon of an artist can do 6 to 8 issues a year, that to do what's the I guess the actual term for, I've said twice monthly. That doesn't roll off the tongue. Double ship?
Double ship.
Okay.
Yeah, double ship.
Double ship.
Because bi-monthly, nobody knows if that means twice a month or once every 2 months.
Thank you. That's nobody knows. Too. Yeah, exactly.
It's a bizarre term.
Double ship sounds great. For an artist, that almost seems near impossible. I'd imagine. I can't draw a stick figure to save my life, but I can only imagine like a great artist, like that's tough to do. So how is it?
Only John Byrne in 1983 could do it, and Jack Kirby in 1972. There's a few who
very few masters of the craft. How did you rally up this gang of artists? Which, to me, honestly, in reading through all of it, there is no, weak link in that armor at all.
I mean, we got incredibly lucky. In a lot of things, like I said, really the everyone should. I feel like Mikel is almost a forgotten Batman artist. Like he doesn't have a statue, he doesn't have a black and white, and people should remember that he's probably done more Batman than almost any artist out there. Like he was covering the gaps for us. It would not have worked without Mikel. But my strategy was always to write to the artist's strength, and always to write to what the artist wanted. So different artists want different things. David Finch, you have to, if you're doing with David Finch, you got to have big action. You got to have people punching each other. This is a guy who, writes in the Jim Lee McFarlane, Aspen style, like you have to do that. If you're doing a Mitch Gerads, you want a quieter story. You want a story that's more street level. You want a story that's more emotional. If you're doing a Clayman, you have the guy who draws the sexiest people in the world. You want sexy people in a Clayman book. I'm going to have Batman and Catwoman on a beach in bathing suits
and a Tom Selleck mustache.
Clayman's also the biggest Magnum PI stan in the world.
Okay, well that shows.
Yeah, so I was like, Clay, we can do Magnum PI Batman. He's like, okay, I'm in.
There you go.
So you have Tony Daniel. You want to do huge action splashes because Tony does brilliant splashes. So yeah, you just always play to the artist's strengths. With Joelle loves intricate things. So we did a lot of like interior scenes where she can do bookshelves, or she designed the wedding dress. I remember the meeting where it's like, how do you want me to design this dress? And I was like, however you want to design it. That was my only contribution to designing the dress. It's just like, great. So she went crazy. She does these intricate details, and the dress is so intricate and beautiful. I have her statue over my shoulder.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, look at that. Nice.
So yeah, you always play to your artist's strengths and to what they want. And I was always, like I said, trying to give each artist a complete story. Until City of Bane, when JR had to come in and do, which working with JR, I thought I'm complaining about that, but he had to come in and do some stuff when Tony Daniels couldn't do things. So besides that one sort of hiccup near the end, each artist got a complete story, something that could be self-contained and could be just belong to them.
Is that, so as you said, playing to an artist's strengths, is this through your own self-discovery, or did you talk to the artists, not in an interview, but basically of like, hey, we're going to be working together, and you find out what they like to do?
I mean, both things. It runs the entire gauntlet. Clay, Mitch, and I are like best friends. We talk every single day of our lives. We have relationships just as complicated as friends, where we're competitive but every single day we wake up and say hello to each other. Nice. Me, Clay, Mitch, and Doc Shannon. But like Jorge, a guy I've worked very closely with, I'm still working with on Danger Street. We worked together for 2 years before we met each other and before we talked in person. So wow. Even though I mean, it's a little more complicated than this, but I was one of the people who discovered him. Like he would just post stuff on Twitter, and I was like, how would you like to draw Batman? I was like, that was crazy, right? But he turned out to be a genius. So it runs the gauntlet. And for guys like that, they don't talk to you. You look at their strengths and you look at where they're going. And you also look, are they digital? Are they, if a guy is selling pages, you don't want to give him all talky stuff, because talky pages don't sell. So if I give, like, Tony Daniel sells his pages, if I give Tony Daniel talky, I've literally robbed him of money. Like, there's thousands of dollars I've taken out. Is he going to want to draw the best he can if I'm robbing him of money? So you want to give guys who are selling pages stuff they can sell. So it's stuff like that. It's both psychology and just and I have one magic talent. I'm bad at so many things. I can't put basketballs in hoop. I'm terrible at running.
You heard it here first. Tom King can't play basketball.
I can't sing. Lord knows I can't draw. Everyone knows all these things that I'm just terrible at. I have one magic power, and it's that I can see what a comic book's going to look like before it's made. When I'm it's like like in the Matrix when the guy's looking at the code, but he sees the thing. I can do
You're
that.
Neo.
That's the one thing I can. I'm the mouse. I'm no.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I can be like, okay, this is, if I know who the artist is, I can see the script, I can see what they would draw. So I just try to give them the best comic book possible to draw.
How do you script for your artists then? I know it probably varies, because you just said it seems like you really zone in on each artist's strengths, but is it as what do you want to say, like broad as Batman fights Bane, or do you break it down like more of really emphasize hits, the pain, the blood? I don't know.
So for people who don't know, maybe you probably know this more, but like, Marvel style is the extreme. Like there's lots of different ways to write a script. No script is the same. In Hollywood, every script is basically the same. They're all formed the same way. A comic book script is a letter to your artist on what you want the comic book to be. So and just like any letter you would write, it can be very, very much from person to person how you phrase a letter and how you. I'm almost exactly in the middle between let's say Stan Lee on one side, Jack, do something about space. Okay, like that was like a Stan Lee script. It's like,
wow,
one
do something about space.
One sentence on the phone. I'm on it.
All right.
And then on the other side, of course, is Alan Moore, which is like panel one. This is in this corner. This is in this corner. In the background, you see this glass, and it's got a smudge on the like, just every single detail in the panel is described for each panel, and it all feels like this. And this is the emotion. Have you read these 6 books? Read these 5 books before you draw this panel. Like, that's Alan Moore. So I'm halfway in between. I do full script, so every single panel is planned out, but the descriptions are very loose. So yeah, like it can be, if I do a big Bane, I'm not gonna tell David Finch how to make 2 comic book characters fight. He's been doing that for 30 years. Yeah. He's the best in the business. So yeah, if I have a fight scene with David Finch, I will put in, like, I was like, this is a 6-panel fight. Panel 1, Bane fights Batman. Bane is winning. And that's it. That's all I need. And then I put the dialogue in. And panel 2, Bane fights Batman. Batman's now winning. And then I put the dialogue in. And then
nice.
Finch can interpret that. My dog is saying hello.
I like these cameos. Yes. Getting to know Tom King's family.
That's right.
Wife says hello, the dog says hello.
Yeah.
Which the dog is a character many people know. All these 100,000 followers on Twitter. It's a fun thing. You have a thread. You have, this is not her. And fill in whatever. Like, I like that.
That's my puppy dog. She's the best. Here she comes. She's wandering into the room. She's got a Psyduck in her mouth. That's not your Psyduck.
There you go. Got to hear it. Let's go to.
You want to come up and show everyone your Psyduck?
Ooh, please.
Oh, there she is. There's the Psyduck.
Nice. Joelle Jones. Let's go back to her, because she illustrated, and out of everything here, all of these arcs, which I kind of said before the wedding, it just kind of seemed like there were arcs, and then post-wedding was a big story. Reading it all collectively, it definitely feels like it is. It's definitely one big story, but it was a great variety of the I Am Gotham, I Am Suicide, I Am Bane kind of go together. But then, I mean, there's the rooftops, and then you have the word jokes and riddles. But Rules of Engagement is my favorite arc of the whole run.
Awesome.
I can't describe why I love that 3-issue story so much, but I just do. I think there's a nice, I don't know, I'd say like Batman's a supporting character in that too. You know, the main character maybe is Selina. I mean, some people could argue maybe the main character is Damian a little bit. I don't like Damian, but So a little bit, Grant Morrison, damn you for creating Damian. However, also I applaud you, Grant Morrison, for
he's so much fun to write.
I mean, I bet. Dick Damian, though, is like one of my favorite things that Grant Morrison's ever done. I think he captured that dynamic in a way that really, I think it just works so well. And I think that you did that too, in the sense of, because Damien is so kind of out of control and thinking for himself. And oh, what am I always forget. Not
that's one of my favorite moments is when he tells Superman how he would beat him. Superman comes
and
he's like, I'm not scared of you. He's like, all I gotta do is draw a magic star in the ground, sell my soul, I'll get it back later. he's like you're vulnerable to magic, who cares?
But I always think about I always stumble across the word for some reason. Damien just goes with instinctual maybe, but yeah. Dick is like kind of the only one that can really talk and get through to him. I think he captured that really, really well. But there's also aesthetically, this was my introduction to Joelle Jones, and I really loved her style. It's something about the bat suit with the trench coat. I mean, it's not Batman, but it totally is, and I love it. I love it. I mean, there was instant comparisons to Affleck's suit in Batman vs Superman, whether that was part of her inspiration or not, your inspiration for that or not. And
we should give Jason Fabok credit, even though he's not on those issues. That arc was originally supposed to be with him.
Really?
He pulled out at the last second to do a Jeff Johns project, probably to start 3 Jokers.
Sure.
And he had done the initial design on that Batman trench coat thing that Joelle sort of worked out and made her own. So I want to give Fabok some credit.
I mean, sure, we could have missed out because Fabok, oh my gosh, since like he first started with it ain't touching Batman, I've been a major fan of his. But
we got to do Batman 24 or Batman 21. The button, yeah.
Yes. And oh my gosh. And he and Brad Anderson have one of the a splash in issue 52.
Yes.
But like I'm telling you, hey, in case you forgot, Tom, he didn't. I know you didn't forget.
I remember. I really like that issue to do with Fabok with the countdown clock. I thought that was one of the things. Like, oh, that's a clever idea.
That was great. That's awesome. I'm trying to think. I keep trying to figure out why I love Rules of Engagement. I think there's something that's poetic about. You have Selina and Talia fighting, and then Talia, as she gets stabbed by Selina in the back, she's like injured, sits next to Batman and is talking, and there's like a respect for an enemy in a sense. And Absolutely. I think that there's something that the Al Ghuls can do with that I really, really appreciate, and like is almost like, it's weird, you're my enemy, I'm your enemy, but like we have a standard, like we have a mutual respect, and I think that's just fleshed out, and that's almost like what the 3 issues are about. So I'm just ranting, but I
love it. Keep ranting.
So odd to me. No, I love it. I can't figure it out why that's my favorite out of the whole run.
I adore it too, and I especially love that final conversation because it's that classic conversation with an ex-girlfriend, where you have that, like, where you've come to where you've moved on from being exes to being having respect for each other, like we've gone through shit, and her being like, all right, this next girl's not that bad, and what Talia likes about Catwoman is that Catwoman fought her and stabbed her. That's what makes like that's what I like about the Al Ghul relationship is that they fight Batman because they want to be with him, and the better Batman does, the more they respect him. Every time Batman defeats Al Ghul, he's like, yes, that's why you're the detective, that's why you're the heir, yes, like that's why I want you.
You're a real challenge.
Yeah, it's different than anything else. It's more similar to sort of the Lex Superman division. Yeah, and the same with Talia. Talia fights Batman because she loves him. And because she wants him to be as good as he could be, because that way he's worthy of her. The only man who could possibly be worthy of her must be able to if not defeat her, at least go even with her. Yeah, that's what makes Talia cool.
And I don't think I said it yet. The art's amazing. So there we
go. Yes. And Joel.
And the art is amazing.
Killed it.
Yeah.
Killed it.
Yeah. That was great. Did you, poor phrasing, but did you seek her out, or was it she was presented to you to do that arc then of like, oh, since Jason can't, here's Joelle Jones, check her art out. What do you think of that? Or did you find her?
No, we always wanted her to come on. She had done, again, my editor at that time was Jamie Rich, and her and Jamie had done a series together for Omi. And they were very good friends. And I was always telling Jamie, I was like,
Lady Killer, right?
Lady Killer, exactly. Yeah. And I was like, you have to get Joelle on. She's just, I mean, she's utterly, I mean, everyone knew she was the next, big thing. And it's hard. It's hard to find, again, to find Batman is a hard to find the right artist for it, because it has to be an incredibly good artist, and it also has to be a certain category of art. Like you couldn't put, I mean, it's hard to think of like, but the example that comes to my head is someone like a Scotty Young. Scotty Young is a brilliant artist. He's an incredible storyteller, but he couldn't do an arc of Batman because it's not that right feel. Right. It's Batman needs that. So to have someone like Joelle, who was both a brilliant artist and looked like a Batman artist, it was perfect.
Yeah.
That's not a true, and like, I bet when people first saw Tim Sale, they're like, nah, that's not a Batman artist. And then he turned out to be one of the best of all time. So it's not a great rule. So
illustrated my favorite story, The Long Halloween, but I've said that way too many times on this podcast.
Right? My God. So
anytime I can work The Long Halloween in, I do.
I met Jeff Loeb just recently, and he was very nice.
Oh, you did?
Yes. I totally fanboyed out on him. I was like, oh my God. Hush, Long Halloween, Challenge the Unknown, all the Marvel colors. Oh, he's like, who is this fanboy? What is your I introduced him to my son because my son is a huge fan of his. I was the biggest nerd.
I mean, one of the Mount Rushmore of dynamic teams in comics, him and Tim Sale.
Of course, yeah.
Like everything. They didn't fail. There's no that's not like they don't have that skill of failing.
That's right.
Gone too soon. I'm trying to think. I don't want to rehash. So like we kind of already talked about Thomas Wayne's Batman. Was it more your idea to include him, to bring him in? Was that part of your developing story? I mean, we had the button, but it felt like that was like closing the book on the Flashpoint universe.
Yeah, I mean, I he was not, again, the original plan was Bane, Catwoman, simple classic Batman. Those three elements were all the original plan, and then that arc, like I said, that sort of W kind of thing. The button came sort of halfway, and that sort of fell in our lap as something sort of Jeff wanted to do. And we incorporated it, and it was, this big lead up to what he was doing. It was a huge success. So when I got to sort of the last half, I was looking for pieces, and I was looking back on pieces I had used, and I didn't write this. Jeff and Josh wrote the second issue, 22, I think, and they had written this one line where they're about to disappear and about to die, and Batman's father says to him, like, the one thing I want to tell you is don't become Batman. And then they disappeared. They probably just had to fill a page, and they wrote that one line. Like, I don't think it was like a deep thought. And I was obsessed with it. I was like, what? His father tells him not. I mean, that's like someone, my father coming to me like, don't be a writer. Like how does that, like, the one thing in your life is like, that's what I am. That's who I am. How can you tell me? So I was looking for, I had some puzzle pieces I wanted to fill in. I was like, I want to include that don't be, and I was like, that's a great motivation for someone to go after Batman. The idea that I want to show you how awful it is to be Batman, so you quit, because this is not the life I want for you. I want you to be happy. Batman robs you of being a Batman robs you of happiness. I want you to be happy. I want you to stop doing this. I mean, that goes back, and Thomas Wayne, if you read his stuff, the Azzarello stuff that was written about him in Flashpoint, I mean, it's really fucked up. It's, his wife turns out to be the Joker, and then he kills his wife, and so his mind was not. And Jorge Fornes sort of great backwards issue where we sort of went into all this at the very end.
Yeah.
And so that I was like, that's an incredible motivation, and what an incredible villain, his own father. It's classic Star Wars. Except instead of like be a Jedi like me, he's like, don't be like me. I have lived pain. I want you to live happiness. I enjoyed that part of it. So I extracted that post button, and then like I said, it was supposed to be more of a secondary element to Bane, who I'd been sort of pushing the whole time, and DC just loved it so much they decided they said that should be the main element. So that's what that got flipped at the end.
Though you don't like seeing your hero getting beaten and taken out, there's no story if everything goes your hero's way. But I do think that worked out really, really well of the Thomas Wayne Batman, because that's exactly, from my side of it as a fan, just reading it, that is what I got out of it too. And are you a Raz or Raish, Al Ghul?
I'm a Raz.
Raz, me too. Okay.
That's what I knew. Denny O'Neil, he said Raz, and he invented him, so I'm saying Raz.
Okay, that's the way. It's just not Raz. I mean, I think that's one thing that we can all agree on. It is
Raish
not
is fine. I got no problem with Raish. I'm just saying when I talked to Denny, he said Raz.
Is Raz. Similar to the viewpoint of Thomas Wayne in the sense of your point. I can't necessarily say I disagree. However, your methods are completely wrong. So the fact of what Thomas Wayne is trying to avoid for Bruce is like, you have pain, suffering as Batman. I don't want that for you as another human being, but let alone as my son. But now my methods to try and get you to see that are completely like terrible. Really bad. You shouldn't do that. But I found
that's where the guy whose wife became Joker and he killed her. That's where his mind got a little broken there.
Ooh. Yeah. But they created a fantastic character. I think you helped prolong, what do you want to say, longevity of Flashpoint Batman, because he was such a highlight for people of that series. And so we got more of him, and I think a great story with him. And I think now he is seen heroically.
Yes, Josh Williamson and I are very close friends, and he actually approached me. He's like, "I'm going to make Flashpoint Batman back into a hero," and I was like, "Go for it!" Like you tell I told my story
of Thomas Wayne Batman.
Yeah, you tell your story. Yes.
I think you touched on this, but I don't like. There's people who forgot or didn't see it. Maybe it was a Comic-Con Brazil. You talked about Alfred's death.
Yes.
And that was him dying was part of your plan, but it wasn't to stick in reality. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was entirely supposed to be a fake out. It was supposed to be, it was written this way. And I think if you look closely at the issue, you can see it was supposed to be Scarecrow gas. Like they gave Damian Scarecrow gas, and he saw his worst fear, which was Alfred die. It was 100% supposed to be sort of a fake out death. And then the issue came out, the infamous issue, not infamous because it was very popular, and then people really liked the death. People were unlike the wedding where people were very angry. People were like, I want to see where this story goes. What's going on? How it elevated it. And the day it came out, the Wednesday it came out, when DC Comics used to come out Wednesdays, I got a call from Dan DiDio, and he's like, "Okay, Alfred's dead." Like he went online, he saw the comments, and he's like, "I want him to be dead. He's dead." And I was like, "Whoa, no," because he has a shitty death. He just gets killed in the chair. Alfred needs to, Alfred can't go out like that. That's a stupid way for Alfred to go. If I was going to kill Alfred, I would do a whole big thing.
Yeah.
And so my editor, Jamie Rich, and I got on the phone. I took my dog for a walk, and we talked until we could figure out that how his sitting there was a sacrifice. And then so it became how he sort of sacrificed himself to save Batman in that moment. And then once it was a sacrifice, then it could be done. I remember talking to Jamie at the phone. It's after the issue came out. We're like, I guess we just killed Alfred. He's like, yep, I guess we did. And I assumed it would stick for 15, 20 issues. I thought James would bring him back. I thought Josh would bring him back. I think Chip would bring him back. He's still gone. It amazes me.
So something's happening today in talking to you that as soon as I grab the book and just open it, and just like this one, I'm basically opening it right to the part we're talking about.
Yeah, there it is. There's magic.
I'm ready for Alfred to be back. But I mean, that's
absolutely
the beauty, though,
absolutely
of there being so many Batman books too, is because you do in Batman and Detective, the main legacy titles, he's not alive. But you do have the One Bad Day if he's included somehow, or you have the Batman Joker Deadly Duo miniseries right now out, and Alfred's alive. That's kind of status quo Batman. Like, by having these other series around, I'm getting my Alfred fill there, so it's okay. But I miss Alfred.
I think when I was an intern at Marvel when I was a kid, Chris Claremont said something to me. He's like, I was a Star Trek fan, and we were talking about Kirk and McCoy and Spock, and he's like, McCoy and Spock are like Kirk's brain. That's why it's so much fun to write them, because they're Kirk's brain outside. There's his emotional brain, his logical brain, and they have arguments, and then Kirk's kind of the one who synthesizes it, and that's how the story works. And it blew me away. I was like, no, they're separate. I was like, oh yeah, that's how it's. And I think of the same way as Batman has Gordon and Alfred, and it's hard to write Batman without, because the conversations you have with Gordon and the conversations you have with Alfred is how he talks about a case. So I have it is. I think Alfred is an essential component, and I do look forward to the day he returns, because I think it's hard for Batman to be without his Alfred.
I mean,
I have no control over that, and so we'll see how. That's on Chip, and we'll see what he does.
Yeah, I mean, for what it is worth, though, like, I do think it works, like, in the story, though. I think the way it plays out, and it's almost like there is a sad what do you want to say, element to it, of you're going from bright sunny pages with Bruce and Selina to that darkness that's happening in Wayne Manor, back to bright sunny pages, and it's like they're completely unaware of what's going on. Like, for a story for drama, like, that's really powerful too, I think. So it's a strength, and it wasn't like it happened and I was like, oh, for F's sake, or anything like that. It was like, oh my god, okay, he'll be back somehow, because it's comic books, right? But oh my god, Alfred's
dead. Dio knew his story, and he knew it would work, and he was right. And I got to write with Mikkel that issue where Batman finds out, which is just one of my favorite issues of the whole run, where it's an issue to make you cry and to sort of feel the impact of it. And also when the whole, like I said, when we started this conversation, this whole thing started with me writing this Batman issue at night. And the first question you asked me is, Dark Knight Returns is my favorite Batman issue. And I attribute that in the first issue when Alfred asks, like, is this a good death? And I remember writing that. I was like, man, now I want to see Alfred. I want to see Batman ask Alfred that question. And I think it's the best part of issue 1. And so that one question that was in issue 1, the thing I wrote for Spec, became almost the theme of the whole issue, until Alfred tells him, in this recording, there aren't. You asked me if there's a good death. He said, there are no good deaths, but there are good lives, and I want you to live one. And for that to become a motivation that eventually leads him to happiness, it meant a lot to me. So you see the sort of full arc of the thing.
You've been very gracious with your time, so I don't want to keep you for another 2 hours, but I have,
yes,
if you don't mind hanging just a little longer, a couple questions.
No problem. This is fun.
Okay, good. That'd be great if you're like, okay, bye, see ya. Oh, I failed.
I do have to go at some point, because I have to turn in this Penguin script.
Yeah.
Poor Penguin.
How did Bat? You're the source, so that's why I can definitive answer here of, like, how did the Batman Catwoman, which is now available to buy in a collected hardcover, collected beautifully. How did that proposal? How did this become a thing?
So issue 80 or so. So we're talking about the issues we're talking before the Beach issues were coming out, and this is all out now. And Dan's talking about, Dan obviously not with the company anymore. Dan DiDio decided he was going to revamp all of DC, and this thing was called 5G, the 5th generation of DC Comics. And his plan was to replace all the main heroes with different heroes. So Wonder Woman was not going to be Diana Prince, and Superman was not going to be Clark Kent, and Batman was not going to be Bruce Wayne. And he called me, and I was told this, and I was like, okay, this will happen at issue 100. Batman will retire, and at the time it was Lucius Fox's son was going to become Batman. And so and what they told me was, we need you to write the next, City of Bane was to end at 85. The original plan was for City of Bane to end at 85, and then to do 15 issues of Batcat stories leading up to the wedding to 100. Just little, like two to three issue, where I could bring back, like Joelle would do 2 issues, almost like not like a victory lap, but like where you could the highlight reel. Joelle would do a few issues, Mikkel would do a few issues, Clay would do a few issues, Mitch would do a few issues, Finch would do a few issues. And just like regular stories, there's a caper in Rome, or there's, the Riddler has him solve something, like classic Batman stories. And so that, and that would sort of lead them to the wedding. And Dan said, he gave me kind of a Sophie's Choice, seems very dramatic, but he's like, if you want, I can have you on the title, but the Batman title has to be dedicated to the setup of this new status quo. So the book has to be about Lucius Fox and his son taking on the mantle. I was like, well, no, but the book's about this leading to the wedding. He's like, how about this? I'll give you a deal. Because again, they had not agreed to the wedding. It was also, I was still pushing it. It's like, you can have them get married, but you do a separate book that's the lead up to their marriage, and you have the marriage in it. We call it Batman Catwoman, a new #1. And then we do, I'll bring in another writer, and we'll do the build up to the 5G in the last 15 comic. And or I'm the editor, you stay in the comic, they don't get married, and you lead up to 5G and you write those issues, like I told you. And he said, and I'll give you whatever artist you want to do this, because at the time I was known sort of for 12-issue series. I'd done I'd won some awards for them and such. And I was like, all right, of those 2 things, being told what to write or writing what I want to write and getting a wedding out of it plus a new #1, I was like, I will jump on that. And Dan, and that way Dan was winning too, because he got a new #1. Again, we were selling, the comic had dipped in sales a little bit in the Nightmares arc, but City of Bane brought it all the way back. All credit to Tony Daniel, who was the key to the whole thing. But so we were selling like blockbusters again, so we had some momentum going in. But he's like, well, I'm going to get a new #1, and I was like, I want to do it with Clay. Clay was one of my best friends, and a guy who's, I just think is, Jim Lee level good. I can't tell you how much I think Clay's life is great. And so I was like, all right, me and Clay and I will do this, 12-issue series, and we'll have the wedding at the end, and Clay will draw beautifully, and you'll launch into 5G. And then the plan was, and then I would leave the book, and Dan's plan was Batman would retire, but the moment after it was not a good, it was to kill off Catwoman basically immediately. So, but I wasn't going to be involved in that. And so that's what happened. I left the book at 85, which is, to write 85 issues of Batman again, that's the longest continuous run. I'm not complaining. It was 15 issues early. 95% of those issues sold over 100,000. A lot of them sold over 200,000. It was a big success.
Awesome.
And I went into Batman Catwoman, and then chaos broke out. Some things happened simultaneously. I wrote the issues I wrote for Clay, and Clay can speak to this better, but there was just some things in his life that it took him a year to get the first issue out, so that sort of caused a large delay.
Gotcha.
And then Dan's 5G plan fell apart, and Dan left the company, and they brought on James, and they're like, I don't know it was like a whole and so James just ran in a completely different direction than the 5G plan. And so that's sort of what happened. Yeah, that's the long and short of it. And by the time Clay and I caught up to our deadlines of where to be, we were well past all of these sort of plans. Yeah.
Well, I think Scott Snyder had mentioned it before, a conversation with Grant Morrison, and I don't know verbatim, but it is something about, for almost like a definitive Batman story. If you want to tell your own definitive Batman story, give them a beginning and an end.
Yes.
With Catwoman though, the Batman Catwoman book, I think it does. It catches you up to that annual #2 story, the beloved annual #2 story where Batman does die, and you do see an older Selina and Bruce. It catches you up with that, but it also does it. You did it with Killing Time as well, but do you love playing with time?
I do. I mean, comics are all about time. You know, that's the one thing you can control is how the panels work and stuff. So yeah, so I love it. I mean, it's modeled after the 2 different things. The 3rd season of True Detective, which is 3 times. I mean, that's a kind of a deep cut, but and also of Jason Aaron's brilliant Thor run where he had done 3 timelines at the same time, which I always admired. That was so brilliant. So yeah, so and the idea of that was my favorite issue. I mean, it's hard to pick one out, but it would. I love the annuals. All the annuals are my favorite. I didn't write the annual 3. Tom Taylor did, but
good boy with the Ace story.
No, that was me. I did that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So there's the Ace story is #1. #2 is this their first date and their last. There's sort of the first time that they went. Yeah, the first time they sort of kissed and their last kiss. That was the second one. And then I didn't do. And the 4th one is me and Jorge Fornes doing sort of a definitive what is Batman story, which I really very much enjoy. But that, yeah, so I was like, I love that second issue. I think that's when I finally nailed the Bat-Cat relationship, and I wanted to build off of it. And it took place in 2 different timelines. It took place in the past when they're after the first kiss. I was like, what happens next? How does that story continue? What happens after their first kiss? And it took place in the very future where Batman dies. And I was like, what happens next? What happens to Catwoman after Batman dies? What happens to his daughter and that sort of relationship? So I was like, I'm going to take that annual. I'm going to tell the continuing stories of those 2. And plus, I'm already in the present, so then I just tell the present. So that's how it sort of came with 3 different stories. And Clay really wanted the Phantasm. I love that movie. So then the Phantasm.
That was an easy sell. And that first image that was shown of Phantasm holding I don't know what her weapon is, and them on it was just kind of like, what? Yeah, so cool. My God! Like, it's a great image. Yeah. So I think that too was an awesome story. And then also the back half of that also concurrently coming out was Batman Killing Time, which
I still
plays with Batman. Time.
Very much so. Well, it's called Killing Time, and it literally kills time. So it's a good title.
This is a Batman story written by Dr. Manhattan. This version too,
aka Clock King.
Yes, but I mean, I loved this story. Art from David Marquez is phenomenal. I mean, at this point, that's not a hard pitch, is it, to DC of, hey, I have this idea for another story. Okay, Tom, done. Like, is that how it goes now?
No, that came about. They asked me to do that.
Oh, okay.
That was originally supposed to be me and JR doing a Batman story for like one of their anthologies, and it sort of somehow evolved through the very vicissitudes of life into us doing a series together. And and that was me. Like, my Batman run is all this deep psychology about how Bruce is sad and him becoming happy and all this stuff we've been talking about for an hour. And I wanted to write something that was nothing to do with psychology. You never get inside Batman's head in that. He's just on the run. He's chasing. It's told from a point of view of someone who doesn't know he's Bruce Wayne. So you never see him interact with Alfred. You never see him out of the costume because the person telling the story doesn't know that's who he is. So it was just very much a story about sort of Batman kicking ass. Yeah. And then
which it was.
Yeah.
Batman kicked ass.
It did. He kicked a lot of ass. And then Mitch and I did our Killing Joke tribute with the Riddler with One Bad Day.
Yeah.
Which is a good going away from sort of.
That one was also good. I'm finding a theme here. I'm enjoying your Batman writing.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's evolved, I feel like.
It's evolving.
My Batman writing, he's different now than when I first wrote him. I didn't, when I was writing him, I was definitely writing superhero Batman. There's like the Justice League's in it, and these big villains. But now I kind of write street level. I enjoy writing sort of street level Batman. I enjoy sort of the year one kind of Batman. That's what I'm sort of focused on now. Very much sort of on the floor.
Couple of random questions that can be as quick or
yes, it's pretty quick because I have to go take care of my family.
I mean, that's pretty important. Is the animals in the pit?
Yes.
created by you, or is it based on not a true story, original book?
An actual original Russian fable. Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Terrifying and disturbing.
Very horribly disturbing. Yes. It was because we had KGB KGB age. So KG Beast, sorry. I got him confused with U.S. agent in my head because KG Beast, and I wanted to do something that had sort of a very old school Russian kind of feel. So I was looking for old school Russian stories, and I was like Russian fairy tales, and I came across this one, which unfortunately was there's copyright rules, but it was before the copy. It was pre 1927, so I could use it. But yeah, that's
it's disturbing.
That is actually in there. It's horrible. And oh my god, it got drawn by Buckingham so crazily.
Nightmares.
I own a few of those pages.
Oh, you do? Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of pages for my Batman run, but for some reason I have some of those.
Not in your kid's office, is it?
Yeah, no, my kid's office. Yes, that has a few. I have like one or two Jorge pages. I have a few Clay pages. I have a few Finch pages. Not a lot.
Is it a requirement as a writer to name streets in Gotham after creators?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no other way to do it. If you're reading Year One, every single street in Gotham that's very emphasized in Year One. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yes. But you can never name them after yourself. And it should be creators. You can't name them it shouldn't be contemporary creators. It's creators that the shoulders you're standing on, you should look down and do tribute to them. That should be the rule.
That's a fun game as a reader to seek those out as well. Are you a yellow oval or no yellow oval?
I don't mind the yellow oval, but my ideal Batman costume is the Jim Lee Hush costume, which is not the yellow.
Nice.
That's what we turned it into that was always after issue 50 with the Lee Weeks arc. We put him in the Jim Lee Hush costume for the rest of the arc. He had been the Capullo costume, which is one of the most brilliant designs ever. So I do feel bad about that. With the yellow circle, which is very cool, and the purple cape. But my favorite costume is the Hush costume.
What would you order at the Bat Burger?
What is it? The Two-Face sandwich or or the Robin fries?
Robin nuggets.
Nuggets.
I'm there. There we go. Bat Burger Deluxe, Batmite meals, Night Wings, Robin Nuggets, KGBLT, Riddle Me Fish,
yes,
Killer Croc, Monsieur, two fish sandwich.
I think the Croc Monsieur was
the Croc Monsieur. Okay.
The Croc Monsieur, yeah. That made me laugh.
Robin
that was
Nuggets
very fun to put up. I did that. Finch did the sodas, the like weird soda names.
Spite, one of them, I think.
That's all David Finch. I did the background. There's one typo of like an open Two-Face sandwich, I think is the wrong one. But yeah, that was so much fun to write.
And this will be my last one. What do you hope people get out of your writing? Going deep with the last one.
Whoa, going deep with the last one. People always ask me like, which character do you want to write? That's constantly. Do you want to write Batman? Do you want to write Superman? Do you want to write Fantastic Four? And I always say I don't care. Like, give me Kite Man, I'll write a Kite Man story. Give me Batman, I'll write a Batman story. And what I mean by that, what hopefully comes across in my writing, is that everyone has a story to tell. Every single person on this street has a story to tell. And if you're talking to the most boring person in the world, how did you get to be the most boring person in the world? Did you go for a world record? And so what's the second most boring? Oh, is that really annoying to you to be the second most boring person in the world? That one guy has slightly more boring. Like every single person has a story and is worth learning about it, and has something inside them that's magical and unique and you can connect to. And that's what a lot of my writing is about. People aren't superheroes. People are people. And learning their stories is important.
I think definitely you humanize characters, even no matter sometimes the fantastical settings. Humanizing and bringing humanity to characters, and that's it's appreciated, I think, and magnetic to your writing. So Yeah, I keep promising you that I'll let you go, so I mean it this time. I will let you go. Thanks so much for sitting aside almost 2 hours just to talk nerd with me. It's one of my favorite things to do, just
pleasure.
talking nerd.
Thank you for saying all the nice things. Thank you to all your listeners for putting food on the table of my children, which is the nicest thing you can do to anyone. And thank you for just keeping comics alive and keeping Batman alive. You guys are the best. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You do a great job. And I tell other people that. It's not just because I'm talking to you right now. I'm a big fan of your work and I appreciate it. Is there anything, I mean, people probably know where to find, is there anything you want to even plug? I know you're writing multiple issues. How many issues is Gotham City Year One planned to be?
6.
6? Okay. All right. I didn't know if it was going to be ongoing, 12, 6, what?
I will plug that book because nobody reads it. It gets terrible. Yes, but I'm so proud of it. I love it so much. I wish people would go out and buy it. When the trade comes out, please go out and buy Gotham Year One. Phil Hester is killing it on art, and it's just I've played with noir. I've deconstructed noir. This is a pure noir. This is
oozing noir.
It's from the noir fire hose. Like come and have a drink of sexy Chinatown Gotham. Yeah. I love that series.
We do wrap up episodes every month and we talk about that one. That's one that we're included that me and my pal P are massive fans of. That it is awesome. And I was almost just gonna wait until a trade, and I'm glad that I didn't, because it's stellar. So
huge things coming. We waited till issue 4. Now you see the origin of Crime Alley, and so huge things are coming that are just like that, where you sort of see how Gotham became Gotham. It's cool.
Oh, so good. So, all right. Well, follow Tom King on Twitter at
Tom King TK. My name.
There you go. Easy enough to follow. Also, make sure to follow Batman Book Club on Twitter and Instagram at thebatmanbc. Simple enough. There you go. So, yeah. Thanks again, Tom. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Rockman. Have a good night. Have a good week.
Yes, you too. Thank you.